Cameron.
An Ottawa City Councillor is calling on the Ontario government to explore solutions to address rising vehicle crimes. Councillor David Hill represents Barrhaven West, and he introduced this motion earlier today. It wasn't voted on today, but it will be tabled for a vote in 2 weeks. And he's pushing for this because he told his fellow councillors today that he wants people and businesses to feel safe in their community. And Councillor David Hill joins me right now. Welcome back.
Thank you, Kristy. It's nice to be back.
So what exactly are you calling for here?
So the resolution has 4 components. One is for legislation to allow regional police to use sound detection technology, for example, to be able to identify when the decibel level that comes off of a modified exhaust system is too loud, to be able to identify that and then use that technology in some form of provincial offense notice. So that's the first thing. The second one is I want to see a strengthening of the relevant legislation for vehicle theft crimes, especially for folks that are on a multiple offense. The third thing is a strengthening of the Highway Traffic Act with regard to stunt racing, especially for folks who it's a multiple offense. And then the fourth thing is administrative, and it's looking at the introduction of an assigned vehicle identification number, which is kind of a geek speak for saying making sure the paperwork is solid so that when you do a resale of your vehicle, the tracking of that is easier to understand, because when we don't have a good system for that, it's easier for stolen vehicles to be resold.
How do you feel that strengthening legislation for vehicle crimes would actually impact us here in Ottawa, and how quickly do you think it could impact us?
Well, it's a function of deterrence, right? So if someone feels that, doing a certain crime, in this case it's stunt racing or stealing a vehicle, is not going to yield a substantive punishment, then the threshold for their behavior to do that crime is higher. If we strengthen those especially second offense, multiple offense incidents for those things to the point where potential thief or some dummy that just likes driving 70 kilometers over in a residential zone may be deterred from doing that, and that is one of the steps that I think will help with that process. I've asked for other things too, additional police presence, but when I was speaking with some folks this morning, it's clear it's a bit of a zero-sum game. If you have a certain number of police, they can only do certain things at any given time. I understand that. We want to have more in Barrhaven for sure, and that would help. But in the absence of having additional police officers, I think improving our sentencing and the Highway Traffic Act and such are also tools in the toolbox that we should be investigating.
So how would you alter the Highway Traffic Act then?
So what I was asking for is for the mayor to reach out through a formal letter to the Solicitor General to start the process of a discussion on this. And I do believe that this is not a Barrhaven West problem. This is not just a suburbs of Ottawa problem. This is an issue across Ontario. And I do believe that this will receive a favorable interpretation and response from the Solicitor General, and I think that because we need to deal with this. This is not a problem that has been going away. I have heard nonstop from my residents, for the last 2.5 years, that these issues are at an absolute breaking point. And I'll just give you an example. It may seem like a non-issue for a motorbike to rip down the road super fast. But if you think about it, at 1:30 in the morning, when that motorbike with a modified exhaust does that, it wakes up 3,000 people.
Oh, I've heard it.
And when it happens night after night after night after night, there's a place here where this is like substantial anxiety, mental health issues that we need to address. And so, I realize that, I'm limited in what I can do as a councillor, but I can certainly advocate that issue to the provincial government to say, hey, this is an issue that we want to address. And I think that one component of that is looking at the current sentencing issues in the Highway Traffic Act in order to add to the deterrent factor of potentially doing this behavior in the first place.
On that point, how many complaints would you say you get a week for noisy cars?
Certainly in the summertime. I mean, if there's oftentimes, people will talk anecdotally about, the drag racers that pull into the marketplace, Tim Hortons on a Saturday evening, at 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock.
Well, you also hear them on the Queensway, and I know because I'm more of a night owl and I'm out walking my dogs and I can hear 3 or 4 cars going for a rip on the 417.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of worse than that out here, and I'm not saying it's worse here than other places, but I mean, what will happen is they all text each other, and they're like, hey, guys, we're going to meet up in Barrhaven tonight at 8 o'clock. Let's see it. And you get like literally like probably in and around 100 vehicles out there just ready to go. And, what's frustrating is that folks, like just the regular folks that, go to Timmy's or go to Walmart and, see all these cars there, they look at it and say, what the heck, man? Like, we know what's going to happen. We know that they're about to go rip around the street. Why can't we do something about it? So that's what I'm trying to get to, is to advance upon, the great work that the police did last year in terms of some of the sting operations. I don't know if you recall, but there was about 5 different very targeted sting operations where the police in mass did go to various suburbs, sometimes in Canada, sometimes in Orleans, sometimes Riverside South, but often in Barrhaven as well. There are about 5 major busts where they came out and basically flooded the streets and waited for them to come around and then busted them all as they went. But this is where my notice of motion from today comes in, is if someone, if some young person that doesn't realize what the criminal implications are of their behavior until they get that first ticket, and then they're like, whoa, holy smokes, like I can't pay that. Or maybe even better yet, oh, I lost my car for that long.
Well, and you do lose your car. So I wanted to talk about that, because already in Ontario, if you are caught stunt driving, there is an immediate severe penalty. You get an immediate 30-day roadside license suspension. Then your vehicle is impounded for 14 days, and then we can start talking about fines after that. Would you want the car to be taken away for longer? What are you looking for specifically?
Yeah, I think all of that is on the table for sure. Yeah.
Like, how much longer are we talking?
Well, I mean, for a first offense, I would let the spectrum be analyzed by the provincial folks that we're putting this up to. But I do think that it should be such that it's enough to deter the future behavior. So if it's 14 days right off the bat, well, maybe it should be 60, and maybe for a second offense, it should be a half a year. I'm throwing that out there just to give the example that if the current process is not causing the deterrent behavior that we want, then we need to look at ourselves and make the change in order to get that outcome.
Chatting right now with City Councillor for Barrhaven West, David Hill. So you've now called on City Council to do this, and as I mentioned, this was a notice of motion, so this will come back in 2 weeks. I don't anticipate there being a lot of opposition to this.
I don't either, but this is going to give us the next 2 weeks to, refine the language, make sure that it is exactly what it needs to be said. There's no surprises here. I mean, I've delegated at many police board meetings over the last 2 years. But, if there are some of my colleagues that say, hey, I got an idea on some additional language or another point or two that we want to include, or if, the police board or the police, or even if some of our provincial colleagues that, we're already engaged with say, hey, these are some things that might make this work a bit better. We've got the next 2 weeks to refine that. And then we will debate it on, at the next council meeting. I don't anticipate that this is going to see substantial pushback, if at all. But we've got an opportunity now to make this as best as possible, so that what the mayor sends up to the Solicitor General has the best shot at success in the very near future.
And I hear you, Councillor, when you said you don't want to play the comparison game and talk about which neighborhood has it the worst. But genuinely, if you're being honest, do you think that the suburbs are hearing more of this or seeing more of this problematic behavior?
Well, I do, in that,
or are you just getting more complaints?
No, you get a lot on the highway, and I'm sure that there's complaints in and around there too. But I mean, we do get, a lot of these meetups, and I think that's what it is. It's folks will say, hey, we can meet up. And the beautiful thing about the Marketplace RioCan Mall here is, you got a big parking lot next to the Tim Hortons, next to the Walmart, where there's lots of room for them to come and park their cars and have a coffee and, talk to each other, show each other their engines and all that kind of stuff, and rev the cars. And then next thing you know, it's the Fast and the Furious, and they're ripping around. So I think
Barrhaven edition
factor. Yeah, exactly. It's the convenience factor of, the suburban parking lot at the mall, which you find in the Orleanses and the Stittsvilles and the Barrhavens.
Great to chat with you, Councillor. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
City Councillor David Hill, representing Barrhaven.